Hello everybody, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about Brittany Higgins and her current trial that's being heard at the moment here in Australia. So it's quite a big news here in Australia. The basic facts for people outside of Australia is that she has accused a member of federal parliament of sexual assault against her while she was working for federal parliament in Parliament House. So it's not simply that she's accused a high-ranking member of the government of sexual assault, which would be pretty serious. She's actually accused him of doing it in Parliament House. Just actually, what the heck? And you know, when it was first reported, people were misreported actually, and there was a lot of claims that it was consensual. And then, as the story evolved, turned out that she was actually claiming it was not consensual. So she was a staff member for the Liberal Party, fairly junior from what we can understand. She wasn't underage, but she was, you know, she wasn't a politician, she was a support staff. And the guy, and I'm not going to mention his name, even though, because this is a public case, his name has been named. So he was a senior politician. He wasn't the Prime Minister, he wasn't on the cabinet, I don't believe at least, but he was a member of the ruling party. So pretty high up and a pretty big deal. This was serious. And then we had all these claims about how did she get enough support when she was making the accusations, and was she believed? Now since then, of course, we've only just had the trial, but between when this was announced and now, so there's been a number of years between that. So she actually started doing all this public speaking. She wrote a book and she was offered, I believe it was $350,000, that's Australian dollars. So for people in the US, that's around about $250,000 US. So she was offered that amount of money to write a book, which is a pretty high amount, I have to say, for a first-time author. I mean, a lot of people are happy with $5,000, a lot of people doing it with no advance. $350,000 is enormous. There's very few people in the world who've got that much for their first book. Twilight, I believe, got $1 million. I believe that's the record ever, unless it's been surpassed since. Harry Potter got like 10,000. Might have been less than that. It's an enormous amount, and obviously it's because of the issue. So she made a lot of money out of this. She gained a lot of publicity, and it set up a career for her in women's advocacy, in talking about sexual assault, in talking about politics and, you know, sexism in politics and all that sort of stuff. So if she wants that career, she has it. Doesn't matter what happens in the court case, she has that for life. She has a lucrative career lined up. Now, a lot of people have said, well, actually, she's lost her career by doing this. I'm not sure that that's true. She's changed careers. She's gone from being a staffer, which I'm not sure how much they're paid, but perhaps 50, 70,000 a year. Might be, I don't know, it could be 100,000. But she's gone from that level, and some people go from that and become actual politicians after a while. Others simply go on to do other admin jobs. And she's gone from that to doing a much more lucrative, much more financially rewarding, much more high-profile career as an advocate. Now, will she maintain that role as an advocate if she loses the court case? I would say she probably would, because the mere nature of the court case means that if she were to lose, there would be enormous calls to say that it is corrupt, that she only lost because these are politicians, they're protecting each other. And even though this was Liberal and Labor's now in power, we've had an election, Labor won, Liberal lost, even though the other team is in power now, they're still probably not going to want her to win, because it doesn't just shine a light on the Liberal Party, it shines a light on Australian politics, and they don't want that light to be shone. So if there's any influence at all from either party, but especially the Liberals, on this court case, they'll make sure that she loses. Now, of course, that doesn't mean necessarily that she's telling the truth and, or that she's lying. It just means that this doesn't look like it can be a fair court case. In a situation like this, like if you had a high profile case, it'd be heard in another state. The problem is, because this is at a federal level, it'd have to be heard in another country. And we don't currently have the facilities to allow that. For example, we could have it heard in New Zealand or USA or England, United Kingdom, I should say. The nations that are friendly to us. Could have it heard in Papua New Guinea. They're unlikely to have heard of the case, but then their laws are probably a bit different. But we could have it heard in Papua New Guinea by Australian law. Just have it heard in a different place. That would probably be better, actually. But yeah, I just can't see this having a fair result, or a result that everyone believes is fair. So if she loses, she won't go to jail. She don't go to jail for false claims, no matter how false they are. And she will, in my view, continue to make money from it. If she wins, of course, she'll make even more money. But then if she wins, could it have been corrupt that she won? Absolutely. Because it could be that the Labor Party put pressure on it to make sure that she wins, so that's to hurt the Liberal Party. See, and there could be people that want her to win. And the other thing is, it's not live streamed. Well, I don't believe it is anyway. And newspapers have reported on it. And when newspapers report on any court case, they decide before the court case plays out. Before the first day of trial, they decide who's the right and who's the wrong. And then they only publish things that match what they want the conclusion to be. So if they're supporting the prosecution, when the defence is talking, they'll make it sound like they're inept and so on. So they will report truthfully, but in an incredibly biased fashion. So if you're following a newspaper or any media about a trial that is not live streaming, you don't have the actual trial transcript to look at. And you can look at the trial transcripts, these things are public knowledge, but very few people do. If you do, you're never going to get an accurate view. You're only going to get a bias. Now, it could well be that two newspapers bias on different ways, but that doesn't mean that in between is accurate, because it's not. So it becomes a bit of this sort of issue, and when it's as politically charged as this, it is a big of an issue. Now, could she be lying? Absolutely. She has a lot of money that she's gained from this to inspire her to lie. And it may have started off as just a little thing and then just blew into, or out of all proportion, as she realised how much she could get out of it. It could well be that. Also, it could be that she wasn't lying, but she didn't want to say anything because she was scared of the ramifications, because of how serious it was, and was only coaxed to start talking about it as she got all this money. So there's an argument either way. The evidence, she's destroyed the evidence, so if there was any. Maybe she did that because she was scared. Maybe she did it because she was hiding something. So we just have to believe her. And that doesn't actually mean that she's lying. Destroying the evidence doesn't happen whether you're guilty or not guilty. It just doesn't happen. So there's a way that these sorts of cases usually play out, and it's usually, in a case of adults like this, it's usually a case of, oh yes, there was sex. One side says it's consensual, the other side says it wasn't. You try to get the balance of arguments to try to prove either way. And of course, I believe there was alcohol involved. That's my understanding of it. So you could argue that she imagined it, that it was a fantasy of some kind, whether it was a good fantasy or a bad fantasy. People can remember things wrong when they're drunk, including this kind of thing. But he's actually claiming, or his defence is claiming, that it didn't happen at all. Not claiming she imagined it, but just claiming she made the whole thing up. So I haven't heard of a case that had that sort of defence. I'm not just saying that had that sort of defence and won. or that had that sort of defence and lost. It's just not, people don't do that. So I don't know what to make of this. It's completely confusing. I think in a lot of ways it's a pointless exercise. I don't know which way it'll go. I don't know if she's guilty if he's guilty or not. I keep thinking like she's guilty because she's the only one we know the name of, really, although recently his name has been mentioned as well. Originally it was suppressed, but then they decided to release it. I don't think it's about ruining his name. His name's doesn't seem to be a motivator, but the financial benefit and publicity could absolutely be a motivator. You always have to have a motivator to lie. If you're saying, all right, what she's saying is false, there has to be a motivation for her to lie. There is that motivation in this case, absolutely in spades. But there's also the motivation not to lie. So, because people will hate her for this. She might even get death threats out of it. So, is that worth it for however much money she's going to end up from it? $350,000 book deal. She's probably already made millions out of it. Is that worth it if you end up dead? She might not end up dead, but is it worth it? And is it worth it to have that as your career if you're lying about it? And I guess we say, well, how silly would that be? But then we have the case of Amber Heard. She made false claims about Johnny Depp, and I can definitely say they're false claims now. She had a defamation case and lost. She made those false claims, and on that basis, she represented not just the ACLU, but the United Nations as some kind of ambassador. And she made a career out of it. She made money out of it, made a lot of money. Not to mention the money she got out of her divorce and settlements and all that sort of stuff. So she made lots of money out of lying about that. So certainly people do that, or have done that. So is Brittany Higgins another Amber Heard, or is she just an honest person? We don't know, and we may never know. Anyway, that's it from me. Bye bye.